policy is the software, and the practical design work, which is the hardware, are equally important for arriving at the best solution for age-friendly housing. Our next speaker, Professor Yifan, Professor of Tongji University, will share her views in a presentation titled "The Impact of Urban Green Space on the Social Life of the Elderly, Empirical Research and Planning Response." Professor Yu, please.
Good afternoon. The elderly industry is a hot topic in recent years in mainland China. This is not only by the reason of the President Xi has mentioned directly for the elderly and the health industry development in the 90th National Congress. That's also because we are really in a stage for a huge demand of aging society coming. This slide shows that the 5 metropolitan agglomerations, now they are all aged already. So you will see that the upper is Beijing, and then Shanghai, and then Guangzhou and Hong Kong. In the middle is Changsha, Wuhan, then Chongqing and Chengdu. They all quite aged, but slightly less aged in the west of China. So we are many works recent years for working for the regulations, the planning regulations or design code, and also for some case study like the facilities, institutional facilities or housing or rehabilitation. But in Shanghai, the things seems more severe because 1/3 of Shanghainese now over 60s. And many of them quite aged. It's characterized like a very deep aging rate and also a high, people say, the life expectancy is longer, and many of them has no children, adult children live with them, and they're getting old without getting wealth. And that leads to a result that depend highly for the facility services and also for the built environment. And this is a contrast with a very weak foundation today in China, many Chinese cities, including Shanghai. So what can we do? So the planners and designers face with many challenges. Among all those, I think the first is where comes the space resources. The space resources for the facilities, for elderly housing, and also for the green space, something in these categories. And other things is if we have already something, maybe not sufficient, but we already have like park, like some facilities, can we do it better to improve the qualities and to improve the experience of users? And finally, this could maybe result in an improvement of health. Today, I think some of the speakers have already mentioned about the green space has a health outcome. So I will not repeat this, but among all those necessary essential things we need to improve, I think green space, open green space is quite important. So we did some experiments and some studies in Shanghai's public housing surroundings. So see these pictures, it's some elderly women, they want to take the square dance. It's quite famous now, and sometimes that provides some conflict with the local people. And the young people, they want to play the basketball. So the elderly people now is the major user for the public space, like green space. But really we are far from enough space to provide, to meet this need. In this case, we do a research, a study based on social ecology theory framework. This framework, simply saying, is people's behavior will be affected by many multi-levels of factors, including the social environment and the physical environment and the policy environment. Very often, all these multi-factors will affect in the same time, but in different way. So we have this conceptual model. We have the exposure. We could to measure the exposure, and then we could also try to measure about outcomes by different questions. Then we have the potential moderating factors and the mediators. The mediators, like the independent factors, is our goal for the study. The site we are chosen in Shanghai is a public housing neighborhood. There, with high aging inhabitants, the aging rate reached almost like 40%. And this neighborhood with high density built environment and low middle income populations and poor living conditions. The peoples over there, they need supportive services and also the space to give their support services. Then the method we use is some smartphone installed with some self-developed app, and we can track the elderly person's behavior, their mobilities, by 3 seconds, per 3 seconds, one signal, and we follow them for 4 months. Then we have quite a lot information and signals. Then we do the analyze. So the research method, the first is behavior study, and then is the behavioral space study, and finally with some survey in the site. First step, the site. The site, there have 2 sites because each experiment we need 4 months, and during 2 years we have done 2 neighborhoods, they are just nearby. The first one, the pilot one, just in phase 2, Tongji University, where I come from, the campus, and the other lower one is blue collars community. But they all built in the same age, and they share the same characteristics of built environment. By our identification and analyze for behavior of the elderly persons, we identified finally 4 target space, A, B, C, and D. And among those, the first one, A and B, they are community parks. And unexpectedly, we found also something we didn't expect to see. The C is Tongji University, its campus. That's belonging to Tongji University. The students use it and staff use it, but we surprisingly to see that many elderly people use it often, quite often. And the D, the target D, is not a garden. It's quite open because it's just beside of the street. It's a walking path, it's the pavement. And elderly people gather there also quite often. That really surprises us because normally if we do a research according to the theory of urban planning and according to the land use of green space, we want to do studies in the university's campus, and we won't do also by the pavement. Then we go to the site and do some survey. We do the survey, each A, B, C, D, each set, like 100 to 150. And then we have this valid questionnaire. We do the survey finally. And then the dependent factors is level of social interaction. And then we have our independent factors like X. We have 5 aspects. First is accessibility, second is facilities, and then conditions, and then aesthetics, and last one is safety. Some primary findings. First of all, to answer the question, is the elderly people going to the green space for what reason? is for social interaction or most of all exercise? So the answer is the first is exercise, physical activity first, and then the recreational first, and then the physical activity second. Social interaction and participating, it seems like the same group, the participation for group activities, they are important reason to go to green space, but starting after the recreational and the physical activities. The satisfaction for it's generally very high to go to any kind of green space, but it looks like in university's campus and also in the Verge Street green space, the satisfaction is even higher. If we look into the frequency and the state, each time's visiting state time, so we have this result like the elderly people, the older elderly people, they will visit quite frequent, but each time stay quite short. And the younger elderly people will stay there for longer, but few frequency. It's not few, it's fewer, lower frequency. And each different green space, they have the different characteristic, and also they're used by different group. Like A and B, the community open space, green space, normally it's nearby, and like the Verge Street is quite next to the door, is not next to the entrance of the neighborhood. And the activities characteristics also different. Like A and B, normally people use it with a collective. People use it with many people join together to have square dance or something. But when people going to see the campus, they walking, and normally very often, they're working with their friends, old friends, and the people sit and chat. I will do it quickly. And this regression analysis, I don't think you were interested in, but I just want to show that importance of impact factors are different in the different green space. So rapidly going to the recommendations. First of all, I think the urban green space needs to be used in a comprehensive way. Like we know now, different green space, they are used in different way. So like in the community neighborhood, maybe they need larger space, but in the campus, we need to provide more benches or some cafe to make the elderly people and the young people together, to meet together, to talk to each other. And interesting things is the pocket. I call it like pocket park because it's quite small, but it's not just like the ordinary street. They have a little bit the space, and this space with greenery, and they could have benches that could gather together to do some exercises. So they have characteristic. So I think this morning, Ellen already talk about the living room for the elderly people. I do think this pocket park looks like a living room for the neighborhood. It's not my living room, it's our living room from the same neighborhood. That will be very important. Second thing, I want to share this tool because we use this cell phone, the smartphone with the app. Then we found the different kind of urban green space. Otherwise, we will do directly going to the neighborhood, the community park. We will never find the other kind of green space. But the data resources have been changed today, so we need to use the other technology to find more things. And today's in mainland China, as I know, like Baidu, like Tencent, like Alibaba, they all have been involved in this elderly industry's development. Based on all those findings, as one of the planning code we are now doing is, I think in this year that will be published and to guide every development. And before the previous version, we normally will give some indicators and give the service radius. But now we calculate for the amount. If you have enough amount, we don't care or not care so much about which kind of green space you create. It's not necessary to be a green space with a large scale, and you can calculate, do you have enough space to make this happen? And then we also involved to some rehabilitation for the existing neighborhood. Like in this project, we found immediately in the entrance, if you can see the colors, yellow colors, the entrance, and people just sit back to the wall. But large space have been used for nothing. They make it safely for people cannot cross in any way, any directions, but they didn't use it properly. So we make a public participation with the elderly persons from this neighborhood, and we talk about how can we use it and which kind of plantation they like, and they feel quite happy. And then the pocket park, I do think the pocket park is really like the living room for the elderly persons aging in place. And also, like in Lilong, you may know in Lilong it's quite dense and without enough space. Normally, they will have nothing like open space, but we also can do something like this metallic framework. We can make some potted plantation. People will stay there, and people will talk to each other, and then they feel happier. Maybe they have some health income, and also they could show something, and they can organize their communities' activities by themselves. The last page, I just want to say that planning is a public policy. We regard it like this, and urban planning needs to think from large level and from the case level. They are same, they are different, but the precondition is the observation and assessment, because today's our planning is focused on the person. Focus on the person is not the object. And then we must have this motivation to find the problem and then trying to looking for the resolution for the solution for the problem, and then the feasibility, because I just wanted to emphasize about the verge green space is quite easy to be built, and these really have a high feasibility during the densely populated environment when they face to the renovation of the urban area. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Yu. Please be seated. Thank you.